Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another video. The Canadians are building a bit of a losing streak here. Unfortunately, they lose 4-3 against the New Jersey Devils in overtime. Definitely an interesting game. Not one that we'd like to see repeated by the Canadians. The score tells otherwise, but I feel like in watching that game, I don't really feel like the Canadians really even deserved a point in that one. So, credit to them for finding a way to battle back, especially in that third period, to get themselves a point in this game. There were times where it looked like, we definitely should have lost this game in regulation. And then there was, we were a little over 60 seconds away from winning this one in regulation. So, it was an interesting game all the way around. Started off with 2 minutes in, Cody Glass scores and a shot that you'd love to get a save on. It's kind of just he's skating out of the right wing and takes a shot and it goes and beats him far side. Really no traffic or anything like that. So that's maybe the first time we've seen Dobes let in one that is not amazing, but oh well. It happens obviously, but. That's definitely a tough way to start the game. It's really tough 2 minutes in to, get started, on the back foot a little bit, but is what it is. Kirby Dach gets one back like a minute later on what is probably the most bizarre goal, at least in, the Canadians' season so far, and maybe even in the league, but it goes off of multiple bodies, goes way up in the air and just kind of falls back down behind Markstrom and goes in the net. So that's definitely a stroke of luck for the Canadians there to get that goal. And another goal for Kirby Dach. That's 3 goals in 3 periods or something like that for Dach. So good to see him getting on the score sheet. Dobson and Matheson get the assists on that one. So good work by all of them. Just being in front. You never know what happens. You just throw the puck at the net, be in front of the net, and you score goals. So we love that. And then, so just like the entire game, really, I just felt like the Canadians were just really slow the first period. Definitely one of those times. We had some moments for sure. But I don't know, going into the second period, Palat scores, Jack Hughes and Nemitz get a good assist play going. They went behind the net, and then he kind of just made a backhand pass that went out front of the net to Palat. There were sticks all over him, but he was still able to get that shot off, and it found a way to get past Dobes. So unfortunate there. It's a nice play, a nice passing play from behind the net there. So is what it is. That's kind of how the second period ended. Kind of just, unspirited from the Canadians throughout the whole thing. They got really lucky to have that one goal they did have, and just that's the way it goes. Jake Evans gets, a fluky goal again. That was so really 2 goals in this game that, maybe weren't deserved really, but, Jake Evans finds a way to get around the defender, makes it a 2-on-1, and he kind of just throws the puck on net, and it finds a way to sneak through the 5-hole of Markstrom, and, we take those. That's Evans' second goal of the season. Just throw the puck on net, see what happens. I love the play, and even before that, I really like his ability to beat the defender, get the chip around and get around him, using the speed. He's not necessarily known as a guy with a lot of speed, but he uses what he has there and makes it work. Just throws the puck on net and gets a goal, and it's a huge goal. It ties the game. Less than a minute into the third period. That definitely gives the Canadians the spark they needed to get back into the game. And then Oliver Kapanen gets a really nice play to get the what would be the leading goal, the goal for the lead, make it 3-2. Demidov's kind of forechecking below the net. Somehow, I don't know if he didn't get an assist on this goal, I guess, as of now. But I feel like he was able to get the puck over to Newhook, and Newhook was able to get it over to Kapanen kind of in the slot. He takes a shot with the backhand, and it finds its way through. I think Newhook took the shot, and then Kapanen got the rebound, and that's what went in. But either way, opportunistic from Kapanen, and that's a huge goal at the time. It gave us the lead. The Canadians were able to hold on to that lead for almost the rest of the game, and then Timo Meier gets a goal on the 6-on-5. Mike Matheson gets a really good shot block, but then unfortunately it kind of just hampers him for the rest of that shift. He wasn't really able to do much effectively out there after taking that shot block, and then the puck finds its way back over to Meier because we weren't really able to clear that puck, and then ends up kind of sneaking through, and unfortunate, but I feel like you could see it coming. I feel like throughout the most of the game. Like we had so many penalties we had to kill off in this game, and so much time for the Devils to be in the offensive zone that they didn't necessarily capitalize on a lot. So I feel like you just feel it coming that they were gonna score there unless we were able to get an empty netter, which we unfortunately were not able to. So that sent it to overtime, and then unfortunately. The top line didn't get much of anything going after losing the opening draw. And then Newhook tries to make a pass. It would have been a good pass if it had gotten through as he was kind of breaking towards the blue line, but it doesn't. It goes off of Jesper Bratt's body, and then gave him a breakaway, and he made nice work of that. Tucked it 5-hole past Dobes, and that ended the game. So. Unfortunate set of circumstances there, but really, when you look back at it with everything that happened in this game, I feel like the Canadiens should feel pretty fortunate that they got out of that game with a point in hand, because I don't really think that the way that they played was deserving of getting points. I mean, they definitely fought back. They found a way to get the lead late in the game, but. I think the Devils definitely deserve to get the win based off of the way that they played versus the way that the Canadiens played. I think one of the biggest things, I just feel like the Canadiens just look really fatigued out there. I didn't really feel like they had the jump. Like we want to see more of, like what we've seen, like that second period against Philadelphia the other day, and kind of earlier in the season, just having that offensive jump. I just feel like we didn't really see that at all. From the Canadiens this game. Caulfield had a bunch of chances this game that all could have gone in. There's definitely a lot of chances. I think Slafkovsky had like 3 really nice chances that all could have gone in. Markstrom had to make some big saves on all of those chances. So we definitely got chances, but just couldn't really capitalize. But I think they were really just too few and far between. I think there was just a lot of time we were just kind of dumping the puck in, not really making things happen. I didn't really feel like I saw a whole lot of Demidov doing anything there, which is unfortunate. I'd like to see him get on the ice a little bit more than he did in this game. As according to the stats, Demidov only got 10 minutes of ice time, which is just kind of not what you'd like to see from a guy who has proven, day in and day out that he's, capable of playing, top minutes and playing, a lot of, in a lot of important situations. So you would like to see him, be on the ice a little bit more. But I think, what you also have to remember is the fact that, we just took so many penalties. Jaden Struble specifically just took so many penalties. The Canadiens had 5 penalties in that game, 2 of which in the third period committed by Jaden Struble, and that's just you can't win when you're spending 10 minutes of the game killing off a penalty. I mean, and especially it's unfortunate that the Demidov tripping in the first period, which kind of negates our power play just like 21 seconds into it or whatever. That's a tough one, but especially just there's just some moments in there where it's like you need to be able to generate offense and play in the offensive zone, and taking penalties like that and just like being generally undisciplined is just really frustrating. And I think had those penalties not been called, there's definitely a way to see that the Canadiens score a couple goals in this game that they didn't and win this game in regulation. But yeah, I mean that just continues to be the story. I feel like we've been talking about the 60-minute performance. I didn't really feel like that was too much of an issue in this one. More so the fact that they just weren't really there for any of it. There were definitely moments that the Devils gave the Canadiens, and the Canadiens were able to capitalize. There were moments outside of the goal scoring that were definitely chances that could have gone in, but generally speaking, I didn't really feel like the Canadiens dominated any point of the game at all. I felt like the Devils kind of took full control of this game from the Canadiens, and we just didn't really find our groove at all in this game. And I think that's kind of a concerning thing, especially considering the lineup of opponents we have coming up next. We've got the Mammoth coming to town on Saturday. It is a home game, which is helpful for the Canadiens, considering the strength of our fan base. But yeah, I feel like if we want to win against these solid teams, New Jersey definitely a solid team. You got to give it up to them. They just got their 10th win over us tonight. But yeah, especially against these top teams, we need to be able to find a way to play, in the offensive zone, dominate the play, at least, for a little bit of the game. And I just didn't really feel like we were on top of the Devils really at all. They were definitely some shifts where the Canadians were a little bit better than the Devils, and hemming them in a little bit, but they didn't really result in goal scoring for the Canadians. And yeah, I feel like the Devils just played way more in the offensive zone than we did, and I honestly, just looking back at it, we're definitely fortunate to come away with a point in this game with that being considered. But on the plus side though, it's good to see that the Canadians are finding ways. Obviously we've seen it. There's only through 14 games we've only not gotten a point in 3 games out of those 14. So definitely continuing to be really competitive in the overall league standings. And we're staying pretty high up. We are now, after this game, tied with New Jersey for second in league, and we're still sitting at top of the Atlantic. So we're doing pretty well for ourselves. Finding ways to get points despite the fact that we're not winning every game, but we got to find a way to get back inside the win column here. We have lost 2 in a row in overtime now, so got to find a way to turn things around. And our opponent is not going to give us too much help because the Mammoth are also a very solid team. They're 9-5-0, so a bit of a losing streak going on for them as well. So it'll definitely be a really interesting game on Saturday, and I think the things we need to be looking for in that game against the Mammoth on Saturday are just finding a way to be more offensively dominant, finding a way to be less more disciplined, and stay out of the box, and just find ways to make the Mammoth and any other team we play this season play some defense. It feels like there's a lot of times where the Canadians are kind of just hot and cold, either just not playing a full 60 minutes, like just having a bad period and then trying to fight back from that. But this one, it just felt like we were way too much on the back foot, and like we found our way to get a lead late in the game, but too little, too late. And well, not necessarily. they got the lead, but you'd like to see them play with a lead for a little bit longer, and play offense a little bit more. And especially once we start playing these really solid teams, we're gonna have to find ways to play offense and make these really skilled offensive teams play defense against us. So but yeah, so we'll have to see what happens on Saturday here. It should be a really good game, all things considered. But yeah, that's really all to be seen. That's all I've got for you today. It should be a good game. I'm looking for, I would love to see Ivan Demonov get some more playing time, and part of that comes from staying out of the box, because obviously they're not going to put Demonov in for the penalty kill, but I would love to see Martin St. Louis trust Demonov a little bit more, maybe even change up the lineups. I think I don't mind the Newhook, Kapanen, Demonov line, but I'd like to see it get changed around, especially considering the fact that Kirby Dach is playing really, really well right now. I'm really impressed with the way he's been playing. He looks like he's back to his past form, making plays. He's looking quick. Obviously scoring goals and all that kind of stuff. So I would be interested to see how he would play alongside Demidov, either at center or on wing, and then put in Newhook or somebody like that on the other side. But yeah, I don't know. It would be interesting to see how they shake things up. I just feel like the more Demidov plays, the more I feel like he's making a case for himself and saying hey, you gotta play Demidov more than 10 minutes in a game where you're trying to get a win, because the more time he's on the ice, the more likely he's going to be able to make a dynamic play that's going to get us on the scoreboard. And especially since pretty much every game we've played this season has been a 1-goal game, having somebody having a guy on the ice that can give you that that cushion of a lead, especially in games where we've choked a lead late or whatever, you would love to see him being on the ice more to maybe give us that cushion we need to win games. So but yeah, we'll see what happens. I think it's obviously still early, both for Demidov and for the team. I think, and as far as the team goes, I think that the Canadians are just still trying to learn how to win. And it's just, you got to be able to be consistent. I think that's something that, good veteran teams do. And, our team is, all pretty young guys, so we're still trying to learn how to do that. And I think it'll come in time. It's just, right now we gotta work through, the growing pains of trying to find a way to be a consistently solid team. But I think you can't really fault them too much. Obviously, not really thrilled with the way that they played throughout most of the game today, but they still found a way to get a point. We've got 20 points in 14 games. Looking back to how we were last season, this is a gigantic improvement. So. Hopefully we're able to keep this up and be at least somewhat consistent. And if we can do that, realistically, we only really need 50 more points, or sorry, um, like 70-ish more points, and we're kind of looking at a playoff picture. So yeah, just keep it going. It's really early November. There's a whole lot of season left here. We got 82 games to play. We've only played 14 so far. So overall, I'm really liking the way that the Canadians are played through 14 games. You would love to see the Canadians just find a way to win regulation games, play a full game, and just be the offensively dominating team that we know we can be. And yeah, I think it'll come. It'll just take some time. But yeah, we get another opportunity on Saturday to have that happen against the Mammoth. So that's all I've got for you today. So let's see what the Canadians can do against the Mammoth on Saturday. I will see you then.